Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm here with Don Tennessen, and Don Tennessen, not only a very good friend of mine, but he is an instructor for the Ninja Installation and also a realtor with the Group Inc. out of Fort Collins, Colorado. And for those of you that don't know the group, I don't know where you've been living, but I think everyone knows the group now. But the group is actually the brokerage where Ninja Selling was born out of. And Don has been an instructor for Ninja for many years, probably coming on 10 years now or longer. And one of the things that Don, we wanted to bring you onto the show. First of all, thank you so much for coming on.
Lindsey, it's a pleasure. Always good to visit with you guys.
So we're actually doing a new thing, Don. It's called Agent Pursuit, and it's Agents Pursuing Mastery. And we talk to realtors, we talk to experts, and our goal with this is to find out about the latest trends, find out about the best practices. And now, having you on, we are facing a situation in Canada where sold data is going to become much more available. And we want to talk about that because there's some misconceptions around that. And we'll even dive in a little bit into the Zillow conversation about Zillow coming into Canada. And let's maybe start with that. Let's start with sold data. And Don, right now, give us a quick background. You've been practicing real estate for how long? Tell us about that, and then take us into how long sold data has been available in your marketplace.
Sure. So Lindsey, my wife Mary and I have been in the real estate business since 1999. And it was interesting that our first year in real estate, at least in our area of the world in Colorado, was the first year of transition from the old real estate books that used to house the MLS to going to something online.
Really?
So we made the interesting transition from the old real estate books, and it was fascinating because obviously a lot of the old timers they wanted to hold on to those books because that was where the secret sauce was. That was where the cool information was about sold data, and we made the transition to the internet. And so what's interesting is that sold data has been available to the general public in the U.S. for the better part of 6 or 7 years now. Although it's not universally true, there are still some states that are called non-disclosure states. In fact, there's 12 of them that still do not allow any kind of information to be passed on, either from realtors or from the local county clerk and recorder on anything related to sold information. So we're still in that transition.
Interesting. And you're, since sold data has been available, you're still in business. That's, I think, the first thing to.
How about that?
Yeah.
Lindsey, maybe one thing we could do to kind of get started here is to talk a little about the history of how this whole sold data thing happened.
Please.
And maybe your folks would be interested in how Zillow actually got started in the U.S., which could be good background information as you look at the prospect of Zillow being present in Canada, and at the very least, sold data being available to the general public.
All right. Well, take us through it, Don. Take us through it.
Here's the history. So a number of years ago, when the internet was first ramping up, the real estate industry in the United States had a decision to make. And that was, should we allow sold data to be released, or should we keep that to ourselves? Obviously, there was a no-brainer that active information, that the for sale houses were going to be released to other websites, because the idea was it'd be good for sellers to know that their listing is being promoted online in multiple websites. So for sale information became available almost instantly. But the real estate industry, at least in the United States, made a collective decision. We're going to hold on to the sold data because there was a belief that that's where real value would reside, and that people would have to come to us as realtors in order to get that information, which is similar to what you're going through right now.
Totally, absolutely.
All right. So it wasn't universal, but sort of collectively, individually, multiple listing services around the United States made the decision to hold on to that sold data. Well, Lindsey, as you know, consumers always end up getting what they want one way or another.
Yeah.
And so what that actually created was an opportunity, because as we know, one of the key things that buyers and sellers always tell us that they want is access to active and sold data when they're making a decision about buying or selling a house.
Totally.
They want that stuff.
Yeah.
So it created an opportunity because the real estate industry effectively said, we're going to hold on to that sold data. You have to come to us to get that information. Well, what happened there, Lindsey, was that created an opportunity for an entrepreneurial organization and a guy by the name of Rich Barton to create what eventually became Zillow. And they said, hey, we know consumers want this information. We're going to provide it to them because we want to add value. And that's what companies do, try to find a way to add value.
Totally.
And so they found an opening in the market. They said, if realtors aren't willing to do it, we're going to provide that information mainly through the portal of public records information that was available through counties and states throughout the United States. So Zillow created a way to provide information on sold data through the use of public record information. That ultimately created this thing called the Zestimate, which was an estimate of the property value. And the rest is history. And now Zillow is a $1 billion organization and the #1 real estate website in the world. In effect, Lindsey, the real estate industry created the opportunity for Zillow by not being willing to put that information out into the general public when we had an opportunity to control the information.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Almost like this, yeah, like you said, like we created that. And I remember, I mean, I don't go, the internet was, totally good to go when we came in. I just got a little shine on my face here. I'm going to try to close out my blinds here and get that off. There we go.
There you go.
We create that, and I remember, the addresses weren't on the MLS when I first started.
Right.
You couldn't get the address, and that was the whole call script was you have to call me to get the address. And we learned ways to stall the phone call. Oh, let me just pull that up for you. I'm looking at this. What's your name? And what are you looking for? And you give me a piece, and that tit for tat relationship. And I love what you said about consumers get what they want, and I think as a result they should, because it's them that pay the paychecks, and we're offering a service to them, and if our service is invaluable, then we can't stand on our own 2 feet. Let me ask you this question. So in your market now, in Fort Collins, when a consumer goes to a website, how do consumers access sold data? What does that look like from a front end perspective?
They've got a number of choices now. As an industry, we were late to the game. So there was a time when Zillow was really the only public website that people could go to if they wanted sold information. But we responded to that, and certain MLSs that have that data have been progressive enough to release that information. So now, as an example, at the group's website, thegroupinc.com, anybody can go there and get access to sold data. Not every real estate company website has that, but we do, and we think it really adds value and it differentiates us. So the industry is catching up, but frankly, Lindsey, the horse left the barn quite a number of years ago, and yeah. We're now in catch-up mode.
And let me ask you this, on your website, do people need to enter a password and sign up for an account on the Group Inc. to get access to the sold data, or is it right on the front end?
Right on the front end.
Okay.
Totally available.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. So, so tell me about the conversation at the group when it first became available. You guys are sitting around and say, okay, now we're going to open this up wide open. What was the response from the realtors?
Well, here's what's amazing, Lindsey, is I think our realtors got the concept right away. The real challenge was convincing the multiple listing service to release the information to provide it to us. That's where the real fascinating conversations were held, and it took several years. And I'll give credit to Larry Kendall, who's the author of Ninja Selling and the founder of the group. He was a real leader in this area because a lot of other owners did not want that information released. And it took 2 or 3 years of lobbying with the local multiple listing service to finally get access to that sold data to be able to put it on our website.
So you guys, as the realtors, were asking for this, and
Totally.
they were holding it back.
Totally.
Wow,
Yeah.
but okay, so weren't you worried? Like, weren't you worried that, and this is what we hear about ours, that like this will diminish the value of a realtor? Like, why do they need you if they can just
Right.
grab the sold data?
Well, here's the thing, Lindsey. Rich Barton, who is a guy who's famous in internet circles. Rich Barton started his career at Microsoft. Then he went out. He actually inside Microsoft formed this small little organization known as Expedia, which has become a $17 billion
Yeah,
valued
just a
organization.
small little
Yeah, just a
enterprise.
small little deal. Rich Barton sold Expedia and started another little small organization called Zillow. And Rich Barton has gone on from Zillow to form another organization called Glassdoor, which is a recruiting and jobs platform. Now sold the other day for 1.2 billion. This guy gets it.
Yeah.
He understands. And Rich Barton had an opportunity to speak to some realtors quite a number of years ago before Zillow was ever formed. And he had an opportunity to speak, and we were at that conference, and Rich Barton said this. He said, here's what you need to know about the internet. Three things you always have to remember. Whatever can be known will be known. Whatever can be free will be free. And whatever can be rated will be rated. And
Interesting.
when you have that piece of information, that's the vision of the internet, because it empowers the people with information.
Totally.
And ultimately, Rich Barton's words were prophetic. It actually came to pass, and that's the world we live in today. So it's not a matter of do we add value, it's how we add value. And when we go to Ninja Installations, here's what we mention to the folks that attend Ninja Installations. You have a new job description as a realtor, and it's two parts. Part one is your job: become the source of real estate information for the people who know you. In other words, if you're Lindsey Smith and you have a database of 400 people, your job is to be the go-to guy when it comes to real estate information. And when people have a house that comes on the market down the street from where they live, they don't think about going online to find out about that house. They call Lindsey Smith because they know Lindsey is my source of real estate information. That's our job.
Yeah.
That's our new job, is to be the source of information for not for the whole Calgary market, just for the people who know you.
Don, now you got me taking notes. Now,
That's
now I'm taking notes while I'm doing this. Okay, I like it.
Now, here's the difference, Lindsey. A lot of realtors think my job is to be a nice guy, be friendly, and because I have a good personality, once they do a transaction with me, they'll refer me. Well, there's a lot of nice guys in real estate, not nice women too. But that's not what differentiates you. Being the source of information, that's what'll set you apart. That's the real secret, all right?
Fantastic.
Now, here's the second one. Your secondary job description: replace Zillow.
And describe that for someone who in
Replace
Canada
Zillow. So in just so that your folks know, in the States, Zillow, there's two things that Zillow has really accomplished that done very, very well. Number one, they've attracted all this data, so you can find data about any house or any area, pretty much anywhere in the United States you can go to, and you get information about that property. And then the other thing that they have is a tool called a Zestimate, which is an automatic valuation system.
Right.
Like a lot of it, it'll give you an automated value of your home. Well, when we say replace Zillow, what that means is, as a realtor, our job is to be the source of information, so people don't need Zillow to get that. We are the ones who provide that information. We're on a regular basis giving them an update on the value of their home. It's much more accurate than Zillow could ever be.
Right.
And the other thing is, we always ask the question, why be fearful of something like Zillow? Let me ask you this, Lindsey. When was the last time Zillow ever called anybody in your database to wish them a happy birthday, or ask them how they're doing, or how things are going with their kids, or their marriage, or their family?
Right.
It's a relationship deal, Lindsey. This is the big thing that realtors, I think, need to get, is that our job is to build and maintain relationships with people. So we've got great connection with them, that the relationship is strong, and then they see us as the source of real estate information. So they don't need some artificial place like Zillow to go to get that information. They call us, they stay in touch with us, we stay in touch with them. No need to be fearful of something like Zillow.
Yeah, perfect. Well said. Well said. So let me ask you this. So let's go back to the group. You guys get access from the MLS now, and you're allowed to pull sold data up. Did it change the relationship between you and the client, and how did that change the conversations? Did the client come to you? Were they questioning your opinion? Did they have more spreadsheets with their, research done? Like what happened?
There's a little bit of that, Lindsey, but frankly, most sellers don't go to that level of information. They don't do that much research. What we're finding, interestingly enough, is the buyers are the ones who are using that information. Buyers are generally much more knowledgeable about the market than sellers are.
Right, really?
Oh yeah, sellers don't tend to do it. They tend to focus on their own house.
Right.
They might, now if this isn't available in Canada yet, but in the States, they might get a Zestimate, which is that automated valuing
Yes.
system, which by the way are notoriously inaccurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the latest statistics that come directly from Zillow. Here's their value proposition. We promise to be accurate on the value of your home 10% either way, 80% of the time.
Really?
That's their promise. They actually disclose that on their website.
Oh, that's funny. 10% either way.
Either way, 80% of the time.
That's a big
So what
fluctuation.
that means is, if you've got a $500,000 house, Zillow promises to be accurate somewhere between 450 and 550, 80% of the time.
Wow. Wow.
Now, in reality, how valuable is that?
Yes. Oh, exactly. And there's, I guess you kind of doing it's a bit of a novelty thing to check it out. But beyond that, obviously people are still coming in and using consumers. And I even heard some stats that, people are using realtors even more now than they were. And that's a Canada thing, but a US thing, that they're even, we look at the stats over time that the adoption of realtors is increased. We're in a market right now, and this is interesting that you say this, where it's a buyer's market, tons and tons of inventory on. And when you're talking about buyers being more educated than sellers and sellers focused on their house, let me just ask you a bit of a side question here. How are you helping a seller expand their horizons so that they understand the bigger picture and aren't just isolated on their home so they can make educated decisions?
Yeah, really, really good question, Lindsey. Here's what we do. We suggest that seller think like a buyer.
Right.
And put yourself in the place of a buyer. And what does a buyer do? They're online, they're looking for properties, they're driving neighborhoods, they go to open houses. Buyers get educated.
Yeah.
And so we're going to suggest to that seller, act like a buyer. Act like you're in the market to buy a house like this one you live in right now. Drive around, take a look at neighborhoods. We'll even set up some showings for you that you could preview that are similar to yours. Pretend you're a buyer. Get educated that way, and that really helps sellers. So Lindsey, this whole thing about sold information being available online, the key thing there is we want sellers to be knowledgeable about what's going on. The more knowledge they have, the more power they have. And really, we think sellers are easier to work with the more knowledge that they have. And so we just think stuff being available online is an assist for the realtor. We don't think it'll ever replace realtors, because somehow the information is one thing, but then interpreting the data, that's a totally different deal altogether. That's where the realtor really adds value.
Totally. Yeah. And and just like you said, if the seller, I always look at pricing homes, and I always think that obviously there's some subjectivity to it, but the market is going to really have this determination of price. If we all have the majority information, we can have different interpretations, but it's easier to come to the same conclusion if we're all looking at the same data. And someone that doesn't have the data is always making these assumptions that, oh well, my vaulted ceilings make that much more of a difference, or we got the upgraded
Right.
nails, as we joke about.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, so having everyone more knowledgeable sounds great. Okay, so it sounds like that the sold data, helping people become more knowledgeable, a pro is available there. What about making obviously the relationship a bit easier to work with? What about some cons? Have you seen some cons on the side of sold data? So some
Yeah.
negatives.
What happens, Lindsay? The negative is that these automated valuation systems that use sold data can be incredibly misleading.
Right.
And that's the hardest thing to overcome is that client has a couple, even more than Zillow. There's plenty of places you can get automated valuation information on your house. And they'll call us up and they say, I just had one the other day. They said, Don, they said, we have to talk. I said, why? He said, because my house has gone up $30,000 in value just in the last 90 days. And I said, now, of course, we know that's inaccurate. That
Yes.
is not, with an average sales price of 400,000.
Yeah.
Their house did not go up $30,000 in the last 90 days, but the automated valuation system said that it did. The biggest problem with this is sometimes adjusting the expectations of the seller because these systems can sometimes be misleading.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you for sharing that. So in our market, there's a bit of uncertainty around these changes. What advice would you give realtors who are looking at these changes coming down?
Yeah. Yeah. The number one advice is embrace it, don't fight it, and find a way to use it to your advantage. And so something like real estate reviews, that we suggest in Ninja
Yeah.
is one of the Ninja 9 activities. Really, a real estate review is the equivalent of an automated valuation system, something like what Zillow would have. It would also be what sellers would find if they go online looking for themselves.
Right.
So our job is to help that seller understand the information and create clarity. It's not about having the information. It's creating the clarity for the seller so that they can interpret the information correctly. To me, that's where we really add value. That's what we suggest that realtors focus on.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. So let's talk about Zillow just for one more second here. In terms of the groups, I assume the group's listings are on Zillow.
Right.
And is there anything that, so changing the landscape in your market, was it the sold data that really brought the game changer in on that? Or were people going to Zillow for other reasons? Or was it the Zestimate that really brought people there for the first place and then they sort of stayed?
It was the Zestimate that drew people to that website. And the real thing about that, Lindsay, that the Zillow people figured out early on is that ease of access and simplicity of the system were critical factors in getting people to use it. If it's too complicated, people won't use it.
Totally.
And they figured out a way that the average person can easily get that information. And we've come to the conclusion these homeowners don't really care how accurate it is. They just want something quick and easy and that they can access themselves. And that's why they use it.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And so here's what we do. Here's what we suggest now because of the prevalence of Zillow and the Zestimate in our markets in the U.S. is that when realtors do real estate reviews, we also suggest do a Zestimate for the seller as well and present them side by side.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and then you guys just bring in education and you'll see that.
Then you just,
and then you'll have that 20% spread and see where it lands in.
Right. Right.
That's great. So, in addition to what we've talked about, and this might be a redundant question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. We've talked about adapting to sold data, embracing it. So Zillow coming into Canada, is there anything that you recommend realtors do to adapt? And at risk of repeating yourself of being the educator here, so specifically to Zillow, what advice would you give someone adapting to that coming to the marketplace?
You know what's interesting about that question, Lindsay, is that in effect, it's like turning back the clock 8 or 10 years in the U.S. And lots of people say, if we could turn back the clock, what would we do?
Right.
Well, if we could turn back the clock, what we would have done is we would have pushed harder on these MLSs that in many cases boards of realtors control, in some cases, that we would have led the charge on the release of sold data. Then we would have been the heroes. We would have been even more a source of information. Instead of holding back, give it all away, and then it will all come back to you. Then you'll be seen as the person who provided the information, rather than having to backpedal and try to catch up after the fact.
Right.
So this, in our world, this is an amazing opportunity for realtors in Canada to be the ones who say, hey, we're going to give you the information ahead of time. We're going to stay in touch with you. You can count on us. Do those real estate reviews on a regular basis. If a realtor in Canada is doing real estate reviews for their clients on a regular basis, the client has no need to go to Zillow. They have no need to go to that website because the realtor is already providing the information. So our advice, get ahead of the inevitable and be the source of information.
Great. Okay, so one more question here, and this will be a bit of a plug because we do have a Ninja Selling installation coming up, and you're flying in to join us like you do every year, and so we're so grateful to have you share with that. So for some of the people that might not have taken Ninja, briefly describe what a real estate review is and
Sure.
how you guys use it as a tool.
Sure. So a real estate review is an annual meeting that you'd have with someone in your database. It doesn't have to be someone you sold a house to, but someone who knows you and someone who owns a house. And what it is a meeting that we like to have in person that will provide that seller with up-to-date information on the current value of their home. So it would be a phone call that would go in, and if I was going to call you and you were on my database, I'd say, hey, Lindsey, it's Don. And the reason I'm calling is I put together some information for you looking at your neighborhood for the past 12 months. And what I've done is collected all the information, the sold information and the current stuff for sale and under contract and so forth. I put that all together in a simple, easy to read report. And I'm wondering if you and I might be able to get together in the next couple of weeks to go over that report, and it'll give you a really good idea of the current value of your home. And if we could get together in the next couple of weeks, maybe we can visit about that and give you some up-to-date information.
Great.
Yeah.
And
So
go ahead.
the idea there is that we're the source of information. It's an annual get-together, and we have that data. And if they don't have time to meet with us in person, our backup plan is we send it through the mail and then follow up with a phone call to make sure they got the information and understand what they've just looked at.
But you've furthered the relationship. You've further asserted yourself as the expert. Two super important things, and you just people further know, like, and trust you, and that's a huge piece of it. So
it's a real differentiator, Lindsey, because we know that most realtors out there in the marketplace, you know what they're doing, Lindsey? They're chasing the next deal. They're not paying attention to the clients they've sold houses to before, and so this concept of a real estate review really differentiates you from other realtors, and people appreciate it because most people, the vast majority of people, that home is their most valuable asset. They'd love to know what the current value is.
Oh, yeah. Don, I can't thank you enough for the information you brought to us today, and it's so great to have our big brother down south who we can pull from, because the U.S. is so many years, like you said, a decade ahead of us in terms of where we're coming in our marketplace, and you have always been such a great source of information for us. So thank you for giving your time and knowledge with us today.
Lindsey, I appreciate that. I'll just say one thing in closing too.
Please.
Let's remember this. Ninja is about abundance. It's not about scarcity. Abundance says there's plenty for everyone. Scarcity says I got to hold on to something. I got to keep hold of it because there's not enough. And when it comes to information, a mindset of abundance is what we want. Scarcity says I'll hold on to the data so nobody else can have it but me. Let's live in a world of abundance, not a world of scarcity.
I love it. So well said, Don. You've given me some food for thought. I've taken a few notes here, and I love it. And every time I talk to you, it's always something great. So thank you again for joining us on the show today.
You're welcome, Lindsey. We'll see you in November.
Awesome. And so for our viewers out there, make sure you guys visit agentpursuit.com for more of our great recordings and more of our great podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe and get the updates. And we will see you guys next week. Thanks, Don.